Early on in my marriage, I had this great moment when we got tickets to the Pacific Orchestra. Now, I wouldn't normally have wanted to go or have taken advantage per se of free tickets to an orchestra, but Aubrey seemed excited about it, and I thought, why not? Let's give it a try. And so we showed up, and I was blown out of I was just so shocked and so surprised at how powerful all of those people playing the same piece of music could be. Now I've heard orchestras on CDs and in recordings, but there's nothing like being present for an orchestra and all that beautiful sound and just how fantastic it is for all those people to be working on the same thing towards like one musical piece. And so it's wild how that kind of incorporates with what we're talking about today. In Philippians, early on, Paul starts writing in chapter 2 about how if you've had any kind of great moment with Jesus, if you've experienced God in a way that has changed your life or made something different in who you are, that it's not just enough to stop there. That if you want to have that, like, be a part of who you are and flourish inside of you, he actually uses the word, if you want to make my joy complete, then be like-minded with Christ. And I think that this is a fantastic moment when we kind of sit around and we think about, like, what does it mean to be like-minded? What does it mean to be similar or the same or copy and mimic? Because I think as Christians, so often we actually get to a place where we talk about copying and mimicking each other a lot. We talk about being the same as Jesus, or we talk about being the same as each other. And I think when Paul's writing, he actually doesn't say be the same, he says be like-minded. And then I wanted to talk about that in a way, or point that out in a moment that says, hey, what does it look like to be like-minded? What does it look like when we are going in the same direction, but not necessarily doing the exact same thing? An orchestra, actually, they all get together and they start playing music, and it can sound incredibly beautiful if they're all trying to play the same piece of music, but if they're playing something different, imagine if they were all just picking whatever tune they wanted to play or whatever musical piece they wanted, it would just sound like a mess. It would be chaotic and crazy, and we would miss out on what it could possibly do. But if all 100-some people showed up to play the same piece of music, it would sound very different. I think it's a great example of what Paul's actually talking about. All of us are going to have different experiences with God. Some of us will experience him in a way that maybe we saw somebody get healed, or maybe we've been healed ourselves, or maybe we've just seen him do something crazy and radical in somebody's life. Maybe he's changed your life in a way that almost you can't even put it into words. Or maybe you've just always known. Maybe it's a moment that you had with God so young and so little that you don't know how to articulate it, but you've always felt his presence there. And I love that he talks about, from all of those experiences, that we can all be headed in the same direction. I love the scenario of Paul because in Philippians he's writing to a pretty big group of people who know that he's in prison, but he's really talking about how to have joy in Christ. And what does that mean and look like? I was listening to a friend talk, and he said to be unified doesn't necessarily mean that we all have to believe the exact same thing. It doesn't mean that we have to see eye to eye on everything. It just means that we need to be headed in the right direction, or all together in the same direction. So I want to encourage you guys as you read through Philippians to look at what are those things that you're going to have that are similar. What are those moments that you're going to share together? And what are those things that you're going to do that are super different, but are still going to point to God? How I live my walkout might look a little bit different than how Anthony lives his walkout. It might be different than how Ashley or Brad or Brea lives their walkout. It might be different than how you live your walkout. But one of the coolest things is to see God flourish in the stuff that you do. For me, I really like dancing and playing music, and some people really like football, and some people like to sit and read. And God can use all of those things to do amazing stuff. And I think when he talks about being like-minded, he's actually saying, use what God has given you. Use what he's created you to be to shine who he is. Read chapter 2 and look at it. Look at what it calls us to be. Look at it as that it calls us to be bigger than ourselves. And most of that is because we all want to point to the same direction. I go back to that orchestra. If I was a violinist and I showed up and played my part, it might sound good. But if the other violinists show up and play, it'll sound better. What about the cello and the woodwind? And everybody else starts showing up, and we've got the brass section and the drums, and now we've got this full, complete orchestra all playing the same tune, and at the end, how different it would sound and how beautiful it would be.